Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon himself, James Bale. James, nothing to talk about this week, mate. It's going to be a very short episode.
Yeah, we said that, didn't we? A couple of international legends at the moment, and neither of us are having the easiest of lives in terms of where we are and where we've been. But we've made it. We managed to get the podcast lined up and together. But I have forgotten my vanity light, mate. So 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, well, this is the sort of care. I mean, audio listeners, you're not getting this full experience. You don't get to see the lengths that James Bale goes to make sure
There
that
you
he
go,
looks
look.
pretty.
See,
Oh,
a little
man,
bit more
just
natural light in here now. You see,
people are
suddenly
very,
I'm fully illuminated and looking as aesthetically pleasing as normal.
And our YouTube view count is going up exponentially as a result of it. But Jimbo, mate, how you been? What's going on?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit of traveling the last few days, as you know. Just suddenly, it's the 1st of December, and
How is it the 1st of December?
Yeah, the year is essentially over, and there's lots of bits and pieces happening as over the next few weeks. I'm going skiing, mate.
Do you ski?
No,
Do you
I've
actually
never
ski?
I've never skied in my life, but I've been railroaded into this skiing trip before Christmas.
Breaks
with my
the other
children.
ankle.
Yeah, no, mate. It's all that's in my head at the moment. Is like because a few people I know are going, and they were trying to convince me, and I was like, look, I've just had the hardest year of my life with injury. Trying to come back from this broken ankle. If I go in on a skiing trip, I'm going to break a leg. I'm going to break an ankle. I'm going to break a knee. So I'm genuinely, all joking aside, I'm genuinely concerned that I'm just going to have another year off with a broken something. Do you ski?
I ski. I learned to ski. I lived in Norway for a few years, and my wife is a very good skier. So, yeah, I can ski. I don't do it very often. I think Australia's skiing is pretty crap. So I've got this sort of unofficial rule where I only ski in Norway.
Are you any
Not
good?
that it's a rule. It's just, I'm not. I can ski. Like you can put me at the top of a mountain, I can get down. I thought it's funny. I remember when I was learning to ski because it took a long time. And I was surrounded by these Norwegians who've skied since they have a saying in Norway where they're born with skis. They come out of the mother's womb with skis on their feet. And so I was surrounded by these people who could all ski and I couldn't. And the first time I ever went skiing, they literally took me to the top of the mountain and be like, oh, it's not that hard. It was very hard. It was very, very hard. But I remember where I got to the point where I could basically competently ski. I could get down and wouldn't crash and I can go quite fast and do all the turns and everything. And then my wife goes past me backwards. And I'm like, I hate you.
How long did it take you to get to competence? Because that's what I'm worried about, man. I mean, old dogs, man. I'm 38 years old. I'm not sure I want to spend a week learning to do something I can't do at quite an expensive price.
To be able to ski properly, it probably took me. I mean, because I went several times, and I sort of you can do the basics. You'll be able to get down like some of the easier runs, I reckon, within a day. The plyo is your friend. I hope you've got good quad strength and good inner thigh strength.
As you know,
and then when you want to be
command
able to
a deadlift over here.
Yeah. So once you can do the proper turns and everything, maybe 3 or 4 days, I reckon. It's just a confidence thing, and it's about how you crash because you've got to relax when you fall, mate, and accept that you are going to probably fall a little bit. I get some ski goggles though because you're a glasses man like myself, and I remember the first time I went, I thought I'll just wear sunnies. It was a huge mistake. They literally froze over. So get some good ski goggles, and I'll also recommend a helmet because you don't want to have a nasty tumble on that precious melon of yours,
no,
Jimbo.
Don't want to do a Michael Schumacher, do we?
At all. At all. Skiing though. No. Good. Yeah, I enjoy skiing. I like it.
So what's the news with you? What's your build up to Christmas? What's happening in the world of Tim Ford?
Still in Phuket, still training the house down. I think I just hit since last Monday 1,000K on the bike. Been doing some really good runs and great swims, and yeah, things are looking good. I'm doing the 70.3 in Bahrain, but when this comes out, like this time next week, which is exciting. I think it's been a pretty up and down year with me with a lot of travel and sickness and family, personal things that have gone on. So it's nice to be here and actually just put in some consistent training and, still working and doing some, some good stuff on the, which is always exciting. But yeah, then I'm off to Bahrain. Then I go home via Singapore, and then I'm sort of done for the year, mate. I think it's been a big year, so I'm looking forward to a couple of weeks at home, just chilling out and all of that. No skiing in my agenda, and then off to New Zealand in January to do one of my favorite races on the planet, the Tauranga Half. For any of
Nice.
our Southern Hemisphere listeners or anywhere in the world, if you ever want to do a race somewhere different, I would really, really recommend the Tauranga Half Race. It's in Mount Maunganui in New Zealand, and it is just an absolute bucket list race everybody should do. It's phenomenal. I actually saw that Javier Gomez is on the start list this year, so look out, Javier. I'm coming for you, mate.
Easy to beat, I'm sure.
Easy. But James, you know what? This podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by 4-time world champion Chris McCormack. Mate, what's something you like about MX Endurance?
Oh, good Lord. 22 hours in a car yesterday, mate. What do I like about MX Endurance? The
I
podcast.
assume that's all you thought about, didn't you? You just thought about what you like for 22 hours?
I like the podcast because we do it every week. We keep people up to date. We keep people in the loop. And we get a fair amount of positive feedback from the group, which I always enjoy. And a fair amount of piss taking as well, which, is always welcome.
I saw somebody commented on one of my wife's posts this week calling her the first lady of MX. And she's like, oh, I was like, yeah, that's a bit odd. But it's probably worth noting as well, guys, I guess housekeeping, if you want to call it that this is going to be the last official podcast of the year. I think that this is the sort of last weekend of racing anyway. So this will be the last time we do a podcast this year, but we will probably do something closer to Christmas. We might do the podcast awards or just something a bit less formal. Again, I'm going to try to do some stuff in Bahrain next week. I don't know, but yeah, this is sort of it for the year. I think it's been a big year for us, so I think we're both pretty keen to take a bit of a break from. Although I enjoy doing it every week, it will be nice to take a few weeks off. But we'll be back next year. As I said, all these changes will be revealed, so it's going to be exciting. But mate, in all seriousness, there is so much to talk about this week.
Unexpected tsunami of news, mate.
I mean, do you think it's unexpected? Because I've almost thought this is one of the worst kept secrets in the sport, because I've sort of known about this for what feels like a few weeks at this point. I'd heard
Didn't fucking tell me, did you?
I mean, again, I assume you've got your finger on the pulse, so I always assume that you know this stuff. But
Jimmy finger on the pulse.
A couple of days ago, where Try Today put out the story basically saying it's confirmed that 2023's IronMan World Championships is going to be split. With the women racing in October and the men looks like going to be racing in the middle of September in Nice. Now, we've got the press release. Do you want to go through the press release first, and then, or do you just want to have a bit of initial reactions?
All I did was cut a small bit out of the press release because most of it was just fat. So this is the bit where they announced that they were going to be what they were going to be doing. They said, Ironman said, recognizing the importance of a dedicated day of racing for both women and men, the bold progress we've made, we have been looking at a variety of solutions for a 2-day event, including co-hosting the IronMan World Championship at 2 separate locations. While we do not have the full details for the format of the 2023 VinFast Ironman World Championship, we know it's important to tell you as much as possible, as soon as possible. At this time, we can share that the women's field will race in Kona, Hawaii on the 14th of October 2023. For the men's field, the date and location outside of Hawaii are currently being evaluated and expected to be announced in January 2023. For the 2024, the men's and women's races would exchange locations with the men to race at Kona. So they split it. They've split it up, the men and the women, and they're going to be alternating back to Kona. So each gender will go back to Kona every 2 years, while... Now, I don't know. I know there are rumors about where the men's race is going to be. I don't know whether they're going to keep that location static every year, and so that will stay the same, and they'll just alternate back, or whether the roaming race will be exactly that, a roaming race that will change every year, with Kona being the only constant out of the two. What do you know, Tim Ford? You must know more than me. You got your finger actually on the pulse.
Well, I believe that it is again. I've heard that it's Nice is signed for a set period of time. I don't know how long that is. I don't think there's anything too set in stone beyond that. I mean, the fact that Ironman haven't actually confirmed that it's Nice, even though everybody's now saying that it's Nice, I found it strange because, again, I'd also sort of heard Nice. So, I mean, I don't know what the details is. I mean, maybe Ironman's being cautious because I think it's worth saying. I mean, there's so much to do and to say and to unpack and to analyze and discuss around this. I think a starting point is that I don't think Ironman have intentionally tried to mislead people, because they've sold people slots to the men's race in Kona in 2023. Like, I don't think that they've done that thinking, we'll get their money and then we'll tell them that it's knees later. I believe that something in Hawaii has changed. I mean, I saw an article that was written by Triathlon Magazine Canada recently, which goes into it. But I think maybe they're being a bit cautious about announcing the actual details because they want to make sure that it is like hook, triple checked and double,
Yeah, I
like
mean,
very
it's
secure.
exactly. I mean, these things they can have their plans, but the contract might not be signed yet. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
they want to wait until that ink is on the paper to make sure that before they make the formal announcement, even though it is as things stand an open secret. Because in Tri 24/7 they said the location of the 2023 men's race heavily rumored to be Nice, France. And as you say, and as everyone else I know is saying online, it's Nice, France is expected to be the place. And like you said about the changes in Hawaii, Ironman have also said that after discussions with the county of Hawaii, Ironman says it became clear that the impact of 2 days of racing at Kona does not work for the local community moving forward. So, like, basically, what they did this year was a kind of a trial, I think, to see whether can we make this Thursday and Saturday work? Can we make the split of racing work? And the local community, it seems, has come back and said, look, it's just not feasible. It's not doable. Because Ironman, as you know, the 2 days of racing didn't come with a more relaxed approach. It came with because we're now racing over 2 days, we'll increase the amount of people that can race. So
And the fee.
and the fee, that pressure was doubled. So the local community probably went like, oh, fucking hell, do us a favor. And so that's not happening. Now, do we have any more details? Do you know, are the men and women going to be racing on the same day but in different locations? Are they going to be racing, because I know the time differences will be different. So the races will take place at different times, but will it both be on the Saturday or will one be on the Thursday still?
No. So my understanding is that I think the Nice race is September,
it's months apart, is it?
Like a month
okay.
before.
I thought it was
a
the
month
same
before
weekend.
the women's race. No. It's separate, very, very separate. Yeah, again, from what I've heard, it's I think they're talking middle of September, almost a month before in Nice.
Oh,
so
mate, they're fucking it up. They're fucking it up, mate. They're fucking it up.
Talk to me about it.
They're fucking.
Give me your thoughts.
Look, I love the idea of, as you know, I've been the Jimmy move the race around, change it, make it so you go back to Kona every 5 years, and then move it around into different amazing locations every year. Take it somewhere spectacular. Make the course challenging in different ways every single year. So one year the swim is freezing and the bike course hilly. One year the swim is flat and hot and the bike course is flat, and then the run is absolutely baking. Make it so that all these unique terrain differences across the world are utilized to make it so that different people win each year. But what they're doing here is they're splitting the men and the women. So there are multiple reasons why I'm not particularly into that, because triathlon is a heavily age group orientated sport. I know we're talking about trying to make the pro races better, but in this instance, you're moving the pros and the age groupers. People like to travel as families to these things, man. They like to, it makes it harder for that sort of thing to take place. Also, if you're putting the race a month apart from the men and the women, one of those races is going to suffer each year. And whichever one that is will decide on where it is in the year and whose race. I just feel like you're denigrating one of those races each year. And I think move it around, but keep it men and women racing on the same weekend at the same place.
Yeah. Look, I have so many thoughts, and my where I've gone with it has changed a lot. And I think it's worth, I guess, putting the caveat is that as an athlete myself, I have zero interest in ever racing Kona. I don't want to do an Ironman.
Absolutely the same. Yeah, we're both on the same page there.
So when I think about this, I work in professional triathlon. Like I work in the professional side of the sport. So I tend to always think of things from a professional, sport as a product sort of view. So again, my initial reaction when I saw this news was like, fucking yes. I love the thought of the race moving around, because it means that different athletes are going to shine. It means I don't necessarily have to go to fucking Kona every year, which is not something I'm upset about. But I think I can completely understand why for age groupers, this is, if I was an age grouper who wanted to race Kona, I'd be very upset by this. And I think it is 100% worth identifying how fucked it is for the age groupers, especially the ones who've already qualified. And I've seen Ironman have come out and said, "Oh, if you've already qualified for Kona this year, we'll defer you to 2024 if you like." But I mean, I've seen a lot of people also say, "What about the people who've already booked airfares, paid for
Oh yeah,
accommodation?"
accommodation. Yeah,
Ironman has to cover that. Like Ironman has to do something to make that better, because that's a fuck up,
that's a fuck up. Yeah,
a
if
proper
you'd
fuck up.
because knowing the sort of person I am, if I'd qualified, if it was my thing, and I qualified for Kona, I would have already booked my flights, because I'd be like, right, I'm going to get these done as early as possible so that I know that all the accommodation's sorted and I'm getting the best price possible. And there'll be people out there who've done that, and that's a dropping of the ball by Ironman,
Mm,
because we're in December and we're talking about a race in September. This isn't distant in the future. It'll be fucking September before you know it. So
yeah,
yeah, I agree with you. From our perspective as commentators on this sport and this podcast, we solely really think about the professional side of the sport. And from a growing the product and growing the professional side of the sport, I believe moving the race around and changing things is a good thing. The the age group thing is definitely something that needs to be considered, though, and I think
yeah.
they've done a bad job at that.
Yeah, I mean, and even the thing that I saw in the press release that they put out today is basically saying, because they're not announcing the venue until January. So what if again, let's say you're racing Western Australia this weekend, or another Ironman before they decide to announce the venue, and you've been all about trying to qualify for Kona next year. As a guy now, you're like, well, I don't even know where I'm potentially going to be racing.
Mm.
Like, I think there's a lot of stuff, and again, that's what makes me assume. Again, I don't know. I have no inside information from Ironman, but I don't think this was by their choice. And I read a really interesting article which was basically saying that the mayor or the governor, whoever it was of Hawaii, agreed to the 2 days of racing with almost no community consultations. Like, yeah, we'll do 2 days of racing, and that same figure has become incredibly unpopular because of the rules that he introduced with COVID lockdowns and restrictions and all these sort of things. And suddenly there's an election coming up, and his attitude has changed very rapidly to being like, no, 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 we aren't doing this. And as somebody I've been to Hawaii twice now, and I have been to a lot of races around the world. The locals don't like the Ironman, and people. I've had discussions with people online about this, being like, "Are you sure it's only a small number of people?" I mean, you were in St George with me this year, and it was the vibe was amazing. All the locals were
Welcoming,
incredible.
friendly, supportive,
Go to
interested, engaged. Even the taxi drivers whose days were being fucked over by the traffic were still up for the race and pleased we were there.
Whereas Kona, not the case. Like, I heard people like saying stuff about you, thinking that you can't hear, or kind of wanting you to hear. I mean, every taxi I'd get into, I was like, "Oh, thank you so much for having us." Like, you're being so out of your way nice to try to like ease the tension. But
But couple
I
that with
think
the fact that you also said that it was busier this year than you've ever seen any
it's
race ever.
fucked, man.
So
It was
it
hideous.
wasn't even normal levels of
No,
they double fucked it.
I look. I genuinely think this is inevitable. Like, there's Iron Man. I struggle to. One of the problems I have when focused on professional racing is I don't think that Ironman is the future professional triathlon. Their business model is geared towards mass participation, which means they want to put on as many events as they can and have as many as people as possible do their events. If they could put an Ironman Kona every weekend and fill it and charge $1,500 to do it, they would, because that's going to make them the most money. They aren't doing like they don't. I don't think, and there's some element of them. I shouldn't say that they're completely uninterested, but I don't really think that they don't put the pro athlete experience at the forefront. They're about filling their races, which is why I find this situation like odd, because like I said, I agree. I love the thought of moving the champs. I don't like that they're separating the men's and women's races. I think that is a mistake. And I I don't necessarily know what is the right solution in this situation,
No,
because again,
I agree.
this article that from Triathlon Magazine Canada basically came up with a range of solutions, because I think a lot of people aren't like, if you're surprised by this, I think you probably don't follow triathlon as closely as we do. Because again, I'm genuinely not surprised by this news. But it's, for example, could they have done a Saturday Sunday race? So because I think the Thursday was the biggest issue. That was a work day, so a lot of people struggled. And myself driving, because I stayed south of Kona, Kailua, like it was a nightmare driving around with the race with road closures and stuff. So it was like, could they do a Saturday Sunday race? That means they might have to split transitions. How do you bring bikes in while people are racing and get their bikes out? Like how would you do all that sort of stuff? Do you do the race 6 months apart in Kona? Do you do, all these basically different, like what are the solutions? I mean, one of the ideas that I saw that I thought maybe is valid is maybe they move the race somewhere else in Hawaii again. I mean, a lot of people forget that Kona wasn't the original site of the Ironman. It was, I think, on Waikiki, and it moved because they couldn't handle it there. So Kona was a ghost town. Now Kona is too big. Maybe it's time to move it to another location in Hawaii. I'm not sure, but I think looking at this situation, what I probably would have preferred they do, and again, hate me if you like, say I'm not in touch with the sport or whatever. I think they should have just this year made Ironman a race for both men and women that is either by, if you've already qualified, you've paid your prize money, and just open up for general entry, $1,500 to do Kona in October, and then Nice is the World Championships that people qualify for. You give it the choice of going if you want or not. Still have a Kona race, but take away the world title this year and then put the race like they did in St. George.
I tend to agree. And those that have qualified for Kona, they could go and race the Kona race this year if they wanted, or they can transfer that qualification to the Nice World Championships. I think having the men's and women's pro race on the same weekend in the same location is, for the pro side of the sport, important for the atmosphere and for the build up and for the broadcast and for the whole experience package of that weekend being the World Championship weekend, where we find out who the men's and women's world champion is for that year. I don't think the idea of splitting it is a good one, and I think that's going to do the pro side of the sport some damage. Like you say, I agree with you. The Ironman isn't the future of pro triathlon, but for the moment, Kona World Championship is one of the biggest events that happens in the year. So we've got to, consider that and the implications of this and what it's going to do.
I want to also then, I also want to look at some of the positives of this as well, though, because I still think there's a lot of positives from this. Again, being on the ground this year, talking with the brands, like what I found interesting was the number of brands that I spoke to saying, we're probably not coming back to Kona. It's prohibitively expensive for us. And you only have to look at, I mean, no offense to Hoka, but Hoka is owned by Deckers, a billion-dollar company. 3/4 of Kona was branded as Hoka, however you want to say it. And I think while Kona became prohibitively expensive, you're probably going to see more of the bigger brands who are able to go in there and activate and do what they want to do. Moving the race to somewhere like Nice means that the smaller brands maybe will be able to go to Nice. And yes, I understand that means that there's going to be less brands at Kona, less, at the expo, less money going in, the detriment of Kona. I also think it creates opportunity, because if you're a small brand, because you need the small brands in the sport, because if it just becomes a monopoly, much like the sport itself, suddenly there's not going to be the same innovation. Suddenly there's not going to be the same competition. Suddenly, as an amateur or a professional, your options become limited. If the only brands that are able to really promote themselves are the Hokas, are the Cervelos, are these big brands, and the smaller players can't enter and can't really get their foot in the door, that's bad for the sport. So that's why if you have it somewhere more accessible, like Nice, where probably the barrier to entry is lower for those brands, I think that's a good thing.
So much more accessible. All the European brands can bloody drive there and stay wherever they want in Europe. It's you're not having to fly to fucking Hawaii.
I mean, and I'll be honest, mate, selfishly, when I saw this news come out, I was like, fucking, how good's that for me? Because I'm already in Europe in August for work. I can stay, and I can literally stay for 1 month. I can go for the work trip, for the work thing, 70.3 Worlds, although I don't think I'm going to race it, and then Nice. And it's like 1 month. So that means that what would normally be 2 or 3 trips for me from Australia, which is a long flight, it's like 1. I can knock that out. Great. I also, again, I think people neglect that Nice is also an incredibly significant location in the history of triathlon. The Nice Triathlon, before it was Ironman, was one of the biggest races in the world. Like, we talk about Mark Allen win this race, which was basically like winning the World Championships before there was a World Championship for short course. It was the race. Like, Mark Allen won 10,000 of these things. I was with Jürgen Zach yesterday. I've been training with Jürgen's crew here, and I said, "Oh, Jürgen, like, what do you think about this?" And he loved it. He's like, "Man, Nice is the perfect location for this because of its history in the sport." And from all reports, Nice have put in a bid. They want this race. It's got ample accommodation. It's not going to cost people an arm and a leg. And I mean, that's the other thing I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's too expensive to go to Nice." I'm like, no. America now is getting the feeling what it is for the rest of the world to go to Kona. And this year in particular, I don't think it mattered where you were from. It was very expensive to get to Kona. Nice is going to be, not just for the brands, but for the athletes going, much more accessible. And again, it's not like we're talking about them putting the race on in. I saw somebody make the comparison of it. It would be like moving the Tour de France to Idaho. I'm like, I don't think that's a fair assessment. It's not like we're moving it to, you know, Samarin in the middle of Slovakia. Like we're talking about Nice, the south, you know, the south coast of France on the Mediterranean, beautiful location, super significant for the history of triathlon, and yeah,
It's a
yeah,
gorgeous place, and it makes it a for those people in Europe. It's not, you don't have to long term plan your attendance. Do you know what I mean? I spend a lot of time in Europe. If I'm over there one weekend and the World Championships is in Nice, I can just pop down. I can just be like, you know
yeah.
what? Last minute decision, I'm popping down. It's only a couple of hours from here or a couple of hours from there or wherever you may or may not be. And it's that sort of, it allows less of a captive audience to come and see the race as well. It allows people who,
Not just family and friends. There's
not
like
just
a
family and
local
friends, you,
community.
you
Yeah.
the local community or someone from the neighboring city or someone who's just like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go and check out this race. So you're expanding that sort of audience capture even further.
I also saw a lot of comments around and you sort of touched on it that this might be detrimental to the women's race in Kona, or the men's, or one of them will be detrimental. And I also accept that that is the case, but I feel like we can't also resist the potential growth or the potential improvement from the sport based purely on short term struggles or challenges. Like because
I
at
agree.
at some point there has to be a change. It's inevitable. Like Kona has the race has outgrown the town. The town is incapable of handling an event of that size anymore.
I
So
agree.
at some
It's
point we
like
have
it's
to
like
make the
having
change.
every
And
marathon in the world ever always in Athens because the first marathon was in Athens. It's not the approach.
but I think so. Therefore, I think that everybody who's looking, again, I'm not talking so much about the age group race now, but from a professional point of view, and saying that, yeah, okay, this will detriment one of the events. It means that less brands will be there. It means that, yeah, it might, it probably will be like that for a little bit, but it has to happen at some point for the change to grow, hopefully. And again, I said this on Twitter. The other thing that I find bizarre about this is that everybody, whenever any change is suggested, confirmed, rumored, whatever it is, in this sport, it is always treated like an absolute. Like it's like fuck this. It's like the argument we've said where I've said I'd love to see draft legal Ironman race. I think that would be fantastic for the sport. And people are like, no, you can't. It's non-drafting. You can't. And I'm like, again, I'm not saying replace non-drafting triathlon with drafting. I'm saying here's a new thing, and that's what I mean with this. If they do this, and let's say it's a complete disaster, they can always just go back to Kona. Like
Yeah,
it's not
indeed.
like doing this means that suddenly Kona's dead forever. It's let's test this thing out. If it works, if it has legs, if it is sustainable, if it means that things can get better, I think it's worth the risk, to be honest. Like I think that the race in Kona is always going to be significant. That's what I mean. Wimbledon, I've seen people make the Wimbledon reference a lot, which I think is perfect, is Wimbledon isn't the most famous tennis tournament in the world because it's the World Championship. It's because of the history. Kona will always be the most significant race on the planet, whether you call it the World Championships or not. I've heard Chris say this enough times. When he's introduced, he's not introduced as a two-time Ironman World Champion. He's introduced as a two-time Ironman Hawaii winner. The significance of that event isn't in the world title. It is in the history of that race. And the race is still going to exist. And I hope that it's not the women men thing forever. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think there's a difference.
Yeah.
The difference between what I was saying with the problem, what I don't like about the splitting of the male and female profiles across a month difference between them in different places. I think there's a difference between making that point and saying that I'm not resisting short-term pain for the sport in terms of change. I think
Yeah,
there
not
are
you, mate. Yeah,
obviously
not you.
there are going to be
Yeah,
there are going to be bits and pieces that I saw some comments online saying, brands can't afford to go to two places. You're going to be, if the brands can't afford to go, then you're damaging the sport. And it's like, well, look, we can't, the sport can't stand still at just because some brands can't afford to go to two races. Well, if it's going to grow the sport, then it's going to grow the sport and it will bring the brands with it eventually. There might be a year where if you're a smaller brand, you say, well, look, this year we're just going to go to Nice. We can't afford to go to Kona as well. But next year, as the sport's got bigger and your customer base has got bigger as the sport grows, you become a bigger brand and you become, it's not that simple, but you grow the sport, you grow the ecosystem that it sits in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, I had meetings in Kona, and I find it I found it odd because a lot of the places that I went to meet brands in Kona had these ridiculous, palatial places with infinity pools overlooking the coast and all this sort of stuff. And you're sitting there going, holy shit, like these brands are doing really, really well. And then you start discussing deals with them and they're like, oh, it's a really hard time for us. We can't actually offer to pay the athlete that much. And I'm like, it's a weird conversation to be having in this setting.
Yeah.
And again, it makes me think, well, what do the brands have to outlay to be able to come and participate in this event? And I feel like that's a misuse of, like, that's not where the money needs to go in this sport, because we need to see, again, there's this weird thing happening in pro triathlon at the moment where the deals are going down, and we can't have that if we really, really want. I mean, I said Joe spoke about this on his podcast recently about that there needs to be some sort of transparency or minimum or something to try to actually drive the value of this sport up.
Yeah, man. Because if you're a brand, let's say me and you own a small triathlon brand, and we're paying 10,000 per person to stay in Kona for a week, the two of us, and then we've paid 5,000-6,000 per person for our flights over there. That's nigh on 30 grand you're pushing up.
Yep.
Cut that in half. That's 15 grand that you could pay out for an athlete for a year for some sort of deal. And that's your bottom line. That's where me and you poncing around in Kona for a week doesn't really bring anything other than those meetings. But us paying for a pro athlete to represent our brand for a year would be a bigger thing.
And I mean, then there's the other part of it is I love to discuss. And this is what I think, this is why I get so excited about it, is you see a different sort of athlete could do very well. I mean, especially on a course like Nice, you're going to see a different sort of athlete do well here. And it's suddenly that age-old thing.
Are you? Or are you just going to see Gustav Eden win it?
I mean, let's
on a road bike.
Let's go into the athlete thing a little bit here, because straight away, my first thought when this was announced was, this is perfect for Christian Blumenfeld, because we've all sort of assumed that Christian, we saw how he was very unhappy that he lost this race. And we basically all assume that he's going to go back next year and have another crack, which means that he's going to be preparing for Paris. He's going to randomly do this Kona race to try to win the world title because he's impatient. Suddenly, if you look at this from a Christian Blumenfeld point of view, he can now go, well, I don't want to do Ironman Nice. I want to win Kona. So I'm not going to do the race next year. I'm purely going to focus on short course, do a few 70.3s, a few PTO races. Kona in 2024 is after the Olympics. So suddenly he has his dream run up to Paris, finishes Paris, potentially wins the gold medal, full attention on Kona. Like, for something like Christian, I think it's fantastic. But then you say, okay, look at Jan Frodeno, for example. Now, again, I know that we've got Jan's reaction, which was not positive. We've heard that Jan says, one more year, I want to have one more crack at Kona. I want to, that's the race I burn for. That's what I want to do. Do you think that means we're going to see, is Jan going to just go, you know what, I'm out? Or Jan Frodeno lives in Andorra now, where there's literally climbs and descents and super technical riding everywhere. Could this suddenly mean that suddenly Jan's going to have the best bike handling skills, so he's going to dominate this? Like, could it work in his favor? Like, I just think that there's...
But let's say, let's say it does work in his favor. Jan Frodeno's response was, I'm going back to bed, when this was announced. Let's say it works in his favor. Jan Frodeno comes back, wins Ironman Nice World Championship, then bows out. Is that good enough?
Well, can you
does that make him happy? Is that his final? That's not Kona. Well, that's what I mean. So if you were him, would you think, you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm coming back from an injury. I'm going to take another year. I'm going to not race. I'm going to train my bollocks off, and then I'm going to go for Kona.
I also, though, like, what was I going to... I've lost my chain of thought here. Is like, with a Jan, for example, so suddenly he's 41 now, so he was going to be doing Kona 41, which means 42, 2 more years in the sport. Again, he's a freak, but even, you have to start going, okay, is age actually going to become a thing? And is it going to become that thing of, like, is it? But what I was going to say is, again, going back to the Christian Blumenfeld argument, is suddenly this also works really, really well for Christian, because if it was just this one aberration where St. George was the weird non-Kona thing, there was always going to be this asterisk next to Christian Blumenfeld's name. World champion, but in St. George. Whereas suddenly, if that's not the case anymore, and I don't want to indicate or suggest that Christian's performance in St. George was illegitimate or anything, but that discussion ends. Do you know what I mean? Because suddenly, he could win 10 world titles and, only 3 of them are in Kona, but it won't matter as much anymore.
That's true. It does.
Um,
It does de-emphasize that asterisk, doesn't it? Because it's just like
yeah,
it doesn't matter because everyone's world titles will be outside of Kona and inside of Kona, and suddenly it shuffles the deck a little bit more.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you get no argument from me in terms of I love the fact that the World Championship moves around.
Yeah.
I got no interest in Kona. I do. 1979. I don't believe the sport has got that much of a history, mate. It's not that long. It's not that long ago. It really doesn't worry me. And the idea going to Kona doesn't interest me. It never has. Racing Kona doesn't interest me. It never has. It just is not somewhere that draws me in. So the idea of the sport rotating and moving around is brilliant in my mind. But I just don't like the month split between the men's and the women's pro fields. I think you're making less of an event of a weekend for both. For both.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I feel like maybe that there was another way they could do it where put the men's and women's race in Nice and then have like I mean I saw somebody put this online where you turn Kona into Ironman's Challenge Roth, where it's just the big race that everybody wants to do. Charge more, have a lottery, or like Norseman. It's a super hard race to get into, but if you get in, you're in, and then everybody gets to experience the race. Again, for Ironman as a brand, I don't think it's going to matter because they're still going to get their entry fee, which is ultimately what they care about. But then you can actually get more different sorts of athletes who are going to suddenly become world champions. Because again, there's so many athletes now that I think really have a shot of winning this world title that maybe didn't have as much of a chance. Not to say they didn't have a chance, but like I messaged Joe when this came out. I was like, dude, how good is this? And he's like, for me, it's fucking incredible. Like again, and you look at Cam Worth, for example, his bike handling skills, mate. Like he's going to have a great chance that he probably doesn't have in Kona because of like these different elements of the race. And again, I think personally for me, Nice, I would much if people say, "Oh, did you catch the Kona bug and decide you want to do an Ironman?" I was like, absolutely not. Nice, however, I might go there and be like, "Fucking hell, maybe I do want to do an Ironman." Like to me, it's a much more
From a
appealing
European
venue.
perspective, it's much more appealing. You haven't
Yeah.
got that gargantuan travel trip as well, just to get out there.
Well, I do.
Which you have, yeah. But what it's not someone like Joe Skipper. I mean, it's taxing, man. Flying out
He can go and
to
train there. He can
exactly.
train there.
He can train there.
Yeah.
He can be acclimatized. He's not
Rudy
having to
von
do
Berg
that.
must be salivating, mate. He must be just going, "Fuck yeah, this is the best thing that could have happened to me."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he literally grew up there. Like, and again, I just think those athletes who are, they're very strong bikers, but they're good at time trialing. They don't necessarily have the technical skills. Will probably not do as well in a race like this. As you said, I think that's what you want to see. You want to see different courses that test different athletes in different ways. And I hope that it's not just these two forever. I hope that it does change.
Oh, same. I'd like to see, I'd like to see the Ironman World Championships in 2024 in the Alps, the Ironman World Championships in 2025 in Norway, the Ironman World Championships 2026 in the Middle East somewhere. I just want to see. I want to see it going around the world like a circus of interesting locations and vistas and terrains and environments and climates. I just want to see all this challenge. It'd be an Iceland. So I'm racing. I just come on, let's just go.
And again, the reality is that those people who have been in the sport a long time and the allure of Kona and stuff like that, I get it. It's a hard pill to swallow. That's why I think Kona has to exist. And again, I don't know. Maybe I have 100% never been motivated by it, but I don't know whether the people want to race it because it's the World Championships or because it's Kona. And I think that what will eventually happen, because again, we're talking about evolution, is eventually there will be people who want to race the World Championships for the World Championships, wherever it is, not just because it's in Kona. So I think we will be able to eventually get to a point where both can exist. And like I said, I really think that it was inevitable.
Eventually it will, like you say, both will exist. You'll have an environment where it's because the race is moving around. It's easier from a logistics point of view and a cost point of view to race the World Championships if you qualify. Therefore, it's going to be more of a because everyone, it's a bit more accessible for everybody. It means more to qualify for it because you're not just saying, "Oh, I got a slot because roll down because no one would be fucked to go to Hawaii." But then those people that want to go to Hawaii, who really value that, can make it's easier for them to get there because they're not having to qualify for it. So both things, they amplify each other.
The other thing as well, though, I don't know if you've seen. So the Kona documentary came out this week. They do their 90-minute wrap up that goes on CBS Sports or whatever in America. And I put it on to watch the other day, and I don't know whether it's that I'm not American or whether it is just times have changed, but I lasted about 10 minutes into it and I had to turn it off because it was like this fucking super like on the fields where the wimps are separated from the men and like all this like super like that's not what he said, but it was just like this super like weird narration over the top of it. And I felt like that was a bit of a relic of the past as well. Like we always hear about, people watch the NBC thing and that's what gets them to want to do the race and this. And I was watching this thing on YouTube going, I feel like this era has maybe like I feel like things have changed and this isn't
Yeah.
necessarily what we need. I think what we need
I've
to
been
see
saying
now
that for
is
a long time. It's just one big 90s motivational video fest,
yeah,
and it doesn't do it for me.
100%. If we suddenly have the race again, I would challenge I would challenge people who are listening who are outraged by this to again, I get it, but give it a chance. Like, don't just throw the toys out of the pram and go, oh, that's it, I'm done. Ironman's dead to me. I'm never fucking Nice could end up being a pretty great place to go and race a world championship. And if you want to, you can criticize Ironman a lot. They put on good events. They really, really are the gold standard of triathlon events in our sport. Like they do a good job. And I think you put a very good organization in terms of races. Let's not talk about all the other shit they do in a very great location. That's not going to be a bad experience. And again, I think people after St. George, there was a lot of people complaining about St. George. It was pretty good. I think we all enjoyed the racing in St. George. I think a lot of people went, yeah, you know what? This wasn't too bad. Was it Kona? No, we said that ourselves. I said it to you when I was in Kona. There was just a certain something there. But it doesn't make me go, well, I regret that they did it in St. George. And I don't think that's why I just want people to just take a breath. I understand it's an emotional thing, but let's just give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, hopefully they learn and go, okay, let's just keep doing Kona. Let's just keep things as they are. Let's not improve. And there's just always such extreme reactions to things. And I think it just needs to be a little bit like, okay, let's just see, because this has clearly happened because it had to. This isn't out of choice. Ironman, as I said, they'd put this race on every weekend if they could, but they clearly can't. So it's the cards we're dealt. Let's see what happens.
They let the cars land as they fall, mate. We'll see what happens, eh?
Should we move on, mate? Again, I think we've talked for that about 40 minutes, to be honest. There was actually some races that happened over the weekend, mate. Do you want to talk about those?
Lead away. Where
do you want to go? Do you want to start with, let's start with Ironman Israel. Now, we did not cover this last week. We sort of forgot that this race was happening a little bit, to be honest. And
it's that time of year, mate. I'm triathloned out.
Now, I knew this was happening a little bit, but I wasn't that interested. And again, in hindsight, I regret it because, there were two pretty stacked fields. You had Patrick Lange, you had Daniel Beckergaard, who I think is, Daniel's one of my favorite athletes. Anytime he's racing, I want to pay attention. Sebi Keenley was there. And then the women's Ruth Astor was there. Danielle Blimehall was there. And I didn't really follow the race until it was over. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, holy fuck, what the hell has Patrick Lange done in this race? Because he ran the fastest ever marathon in an Ironman with a 2:30 marathon. So let's just go briefly through it. In the men's race, first off the bike was Robert Callan, who had a 1.5 minute gap to Daniel Beckergaard and 4 minutes, 8 seconds to Florian Angard and 8 minutes, 15 to the group. 8 minutes, 15 to the group with Patrick Lange and Sebastian Keenley. So that was on the bike, first off the bike. By 24 kilometers of the run, Daniel Beckergaard had overtaken Callan, and then Lange would eventually pass Daniel to take the win in 7:42. Again, running a 2:30 marathon. It's unbelievable, mate. It's actually we know Patrick Lange is a good runner, but fuck me, that's fast.
That is astounding, isn't it? Running a 2:30 marathon at the end of an Ironman, be the fastest ever marathon run in an Ironman ever recorded is quite incredible. What a run! And because when he came off the bike, what did you say? He was 8:15 down. So to run that back up and then to take the victory, good work, Patrick. Love to see it, mate.
Well, and I found it very funny that the initial reaction to this is the course short? Is the course short? Oh, it can't be legitimate. Can't be. It's never just like, let's celebrate this incredible achievement. And Patrick Lange himself put out the files on Strava. Check it. And I think it was like maybe 300 meters short or something. So again, Ironman standards, it's pretty good. Like again, I think we just have to take our hats off and go, Patrick Lange really is the pinnacle.
Yeah,
of running in our
especially
sport,
after having a bit of an accident recently and not racing Kona, and it's good to see him. Good to see him on the top step again.
But to me, mate, as much as I was blown away by what Patrick Lange did, what made me very, very happy in the IronMan Israel result was to see Ruth Astle win,
Yeah.
and not only win, but
What
win
a
in
champion.
style. So in the women's race, Astle came out of the water 6 minutes, 25 seconds down on the leaders. And by 68 kilometers of the bike, she'd caught up to the front, and she was with Susie Cheatham and a group who rode together until 130 Ks of the bike, where Astle made her move. She put 3 minutes into Blimehole and Cheatham over the final 30 kilometers of the bike. So maybe it was 150K, sorry. But yeah, she literally put 3 minutes into them over 30K. She then ran a 2:57 10-second marathon and convincingly stormed to the win, enjoying a 9-minute buffer over Blimehole in second. So she finished in first place, 8:41.13, with a sub 3 hour marathon. Second place, Daniela Blimehole, 8:50.13. And third place, Barbara Riveros, 8:36.46. Again,
No.
Ruth Astle, absolute champion.
Why is the
to see
third
that,
place time so much quicker than the first place time there, mate?
I don't know. Maybe it's a mistake.
Must be a typo.
I don't know.
Must be a
typo.
56. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 8:56.
But well, yeah,
Ruth
Ruth
Astle.
Great to see it, mate. Great to see, because she's a brilliant human being, isn't she? And seeing her take victories like that is well deserved and long overdue.
She's good at this time of year, isn't she? We saw her do
Yeah.
the sneaky double last year at the end of the year, and she again. I mean, I know that Ruth had some challenges around running and stuff this year. She had a few little niggles and things like that. So to put in her best ever marathon, again, very well-rounded performance. We know that Ruth is incredibly strong on the bike. So to have that strong bike performance and back it up with that killer run, again, beating some incredibly class women, very, very good. Like Ruth is, great performance. And I think this has been a great season for Ruth. She was fifth in St. George and this. So love to see it, mate.
Legit, mate. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. What other racing did we have last weekend?
There was this race in Abu Dhabi, or two races in Abu Dhabi in World Triathlon, mate. I don't know if you knew, but they were pretty significant because it all came down to who won and didn't win in the men's and women's race to crown the world champions. Now, by a complete fluke and coincidence, you watched the women's race and I didn't, and I watched the men's race and you didn't. So we've got this covered, mate. So we can talk through World Triathlon Championship Series Grand Finals in Abu Dhabi.
I called it, didn't I? Didn't I call the women's race?
I think we both did, didn't we?
Did we? No, I think I said that Georgia Taylor Brown was going to win, didn't I? I think so.
I'm pretty sure I said Flora would win. So
yeah. So it was who would win in the women's race between Flora and Georgia Taylor Brown, and it came down to the last 10-kilometer run. Essentially, it was Georgia who made the first move, quickest out of transition to open up a gap of around 30 meters. They both looked comfortable as they eased clear of Lopez, but Duffy's incredible list of titles and achievement meant she was never going to go down without a fight. And sure enough, she was back on level terms at the end of the first 4 laps. It was basically, with all due respect to the rest, this was the classic battle we'd all wanted, and it was nip and tuck on the first 2 before the moment came when Duffy asserted, putting daylight between them and stretching out her lead to 24 seconds with a lap remaining. When the line came, Duffy stopped the clock in 1:53.24 to extend what is pretty much a clean sweep of all titles that matter, with Taylor Brown 1:04 back in second. And essentially, the women's were Flora Duffy in 1:53.24, Georgia Taylor Brown in 1:54.28, and Lena. How do I pronounce her surname? What is that letter?
I don't know. I'm not even going to try.
No, with Lena in third place in 1:55.59. The standings for the year: Flora Duffy leads the World Championship, wins the World Championship with 5:1.06. Georgia Taylor Brown in second with 5:0.81, and Taylor Knibb in third with 4:1.79. So basically, Flora Duffy, mate, too strong. Took the win, exactly like you said, to be honest. You called it last week. You said that she would take it on the run, and she did.
I saw that Taylor Knibb and Maya Kingma had a little nasty crash on the course, which was disappointing to see. But again, I think we love to see that it came down to that head-to-head. I mean, GTB's had a great year regardless. But Flora Duffy is the queen of this distance at the moment. I think she's going to win another gold medal in Paris, to be honest. I think I said at the start, I want to see Flora coming up to middle distance. No, I'm happy just to see her doing her thing at this World Triathlon Championship Series racing, because
she's very, very good, isn't she? She's very, very good. Yeah, and she's got the ability to push on the bike when needed on courses that that need a strong bike, that are undulating, and she's got opportunity to open up gaps, she can do that. But she's also strong enough to just take it on the run when she needs to. It's she's a very hard athlete to beat, I'm sure, because
Mm,
it's not like you can think,
mm,
well, as long as I stay with her on the bike, I can take her on the run. And so
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
she's the all rounder, mate. And like you say, I wouldn't be surprised to see another gold medal in her future.
The men's race, mate, was a complete clusterfuck because there was so many movements and changes, and where this person came, this would affect this and this and this and this. It was a roller coaster of a race to watch. And again, it sort of went how I imagined. I think having Henry Skurman and the Vinces, those sort of swim guys, made it very hard for Hayden and Alex Yee to really get up the front. I didn't expect Leo Berger to walk away with the title or the win here, and the fact that he did, I was so happy to see happen. But it was exhilarating to watch this race. Like I've seen a lot of people complain that World Triathlon is a wet run. I did not think it was a wet run this week. Like there was a lot of stuff happening. The group committed to the attack on the bike. You saw Hayden and those guys and Christian, everybody try to close the gap. They couldn't. It was wild. And then on the actual run, the way it was changing, where I think it was Leo was winning and Alex was running with Yellow Gains. And as long as Alex finished ahead of Yellow Gains, he would win, but unless Hayden was one place behind him or not. So then Hayden was in fourth. So then Hayden technically would have won. And then Leo wins the race. He's now leading the world championship, and it all comes down to Alexia has a sprint finish with Yellow Gains. Yellow Gains wins, so he denies Alexia the world title. And then Hayden Wild, who the first lap of the run looked like he was going backwards, who came good and was starting to really eat into the lead. Sorry, Morgan Pearson came second. I forgot. Morgan Pearson had an incredible run. For a guy who's been missing most of this year, the guy he is such a class athlete. How could I forget Morgan? But Yellow finished third to stop Alex from getting third, because if Alex got third, he would have won the title. Even now, it sounds ridiculous. And then if Hayden finished fifth, he still would have won the world title. And then within the last kilometer, who comes past but old Aussie Matty Hauser passes Hayden Wild and denies Hayden the world title. So basically, for Leo to win, he had to win. Alex couldn't finish in the top three, and Hayden couldn't finish in the top five. And that's what happened in the race. So it was this like fairy tale finish. And it was so exciting to watch because the commentators didn't even know what was happening. They're like, "Shit, what happens here? And if this person wins, what about this and this and this?" And it was
Yeah,
wild to watch.
it was
And
if for Berger to win, he needed to win. He needed to win the race, and Yi to finish no better than fourth, and Wild to finish no better than sixth.
yeah,
So Leo won the race. Alex finished fourth. Hayden finished sixth. And so that was the stars aligned basically to allow Leo Berger
yeah.
to take that world championship. And I love it because Leo Berger is a cracking bloke. And to see that little combination play out, I wish I'd watched this race live, because I was out and about at the time, and I saw the group chat erupting with various comments from you and others, but must have been quite enthralling to watch, mate. How long did it take from the line being crossed for them to tell you who was world champion, or for your brain to figure it out?
I think it was pretty much while it was happening, but there was this great moment where they were interviewing Leo Berger at the finish line, and they're saying, like, how does it feel? And he's like, "Is it confirmed? Is it confirmed?" And Trevor's like, "I can confirm you're the world champion." And you actually got to see Leo's reaction as he finds out that he was confirmed as the world champion, and it was like incredible. And I mean, I know that I think Vince still finished quite high. I think Vince, what if he finished fifth overall for this season, which again, you consider Vince's year fantastic. But it felt to me like he really did the teammate part, because his run wasn't there. He ran like not great, but he did. He was on the front of the bike. He was pushing the pace. He was really digging deep. I assume, or I think maybe to help his teammate out a little bit to secure that French World Championship. Like they did everything right. They did everything in their power that they could control to make sure that Leo won the world title. Was a sight to behold. And the other person that I really want to talk about at this race was Henry Schumann. So for all the people who don't necessarily know or have wondered where's Henry been, Henry has been through the absolute fucking ringer the last couple of years. Broke his ankle at Tokyo, had surgery, was on the road back, was signed to race Super League Triathlon, was finally getting ready. Week before Super League, crashes his bike, breaks his elbows, on the brink of retirement, goes and does some races because he has to, doesn't do well. To see Henry come out here and at like 6 kilometers of the run, be in third position at the grand final, was phenomenal. Like I got quite emotional watching it because I know how hard it's been for Henry. So to see him still be able to be so competitive after, not really doing the run train, so we knew his run wouldn't be there. Like Henry Skurman to make that comeback was really, really fantastic as well. But I mean, there's so much to talk about. Hayden Wild, Alex Yee. I mean, I don't know what we're obviously close mates with Hayden. It was pretty hard to see him like literally just, you could see Matt Hauser sort of pass him and Hayden just physically couldn't react.
Yeah, I mean, so the final standings: Leo Berger 4.742, Alex Yee 4.721, and Hayden finished in 4.696. Now, yeah, I feel for Hayden a lot because it's felt like his title all year. I mean, obviously Alex Yee and him have had this battle, but I've had it in my mind that Hayden was going to take this. For him not to, it's a real shame. But I mean, there's quite a distance between there's quite a time distance between him and Hauser come the end. So Hauser must have passed him and then put some distance between the two of them. Was there no reaction at all from Hayden? Was there? Yeah,
No,
okay. So he was capitulating at that point.
It was quite interesting because first lap of the run, Hayden didn't look great. And again, you had Morgan Pearson who went through, like storming through. He was fucking way back and just ran basically straight through everybody to second. And then Leo sort of held the gap to him for the back end of the run. But Hayden looked super rough at the first lap. Like I was like, shit, is he okay? And then the second and third lap, he was coming. And you're like, shit, he could pass Yee here. And then there was thoughts, could he run his way up to actually win the race? So you're like, fuck, this is exceptional. And then fourth lap, he seemed to hit the wall. But you're right. I thought this was Hayden's or Alex's. I really thought one of those two guys was going to win it. We're going to win it. I find it interesting that both of them, I mean, Alex didn't race Super League and he sort of when he was doing French Grand Prix stuff, but focusing very much on this. And he's come back, not the Alex C we're used to seeing. And then Hayden has also seemed, maybe it's just been a big year for Hayden, but to me, Hayden seemed quite flat at the back end of this year. He didn't win the grand final for Super League and Neom. He looked a little bit tired. And then this one, he just again didn't seem.
It's been a big year
that we're used to seeing. Yeah,
I love it when a world championship is decided in the final race in a chaotic fashion with people, because when it all comes down to one race, anything can happen, and that shows here. It's not as easy as I just need to finish fourth. Finishing fourth when you need to finish fourth to win a world championship is not as easy as just rocking up and finishing fourth or finishing fifth or wherever you need to finish, because you never know what's going to happen on that day. And like you say, with an athlete like Vince Louis doing what he needed to do for Leo Berger and the team front, you're going to have a very different dynamic because you've got everyone with their own agenda on a day like this. And Leo Berger's agenda was to win the race and hope that the other pieces fell into position for him, and they did. And congratulations to him, basically.
And again, worth mentioning, Christian Blumenfeld was right up there again. Like Christian was only a minute off the pace in 8th position. It's again, I know we love to see.
He's not a bad athlete, him, is he?
Fuck, he's good, eh? Like honestly,
he's not bad, is he?
He is. I mean, again, no spoilers. He's my male triathlete of the year. Like, not even a doubt in my mind. It's Christian this year.
Did I not take that? Do I not take that title in your brain?
You're not a triathlete anymore, mate. So you're my ultra runner of the year.
Oh.
But again, those Norwegian boys are just doing so well. And again, little shout out to our mate Tyler. Tyler Mizachuk had some issues after the swim. It's been a real rough year for Tyler. But again, mate, we know you'll be back better than ever. Mate, one last thing to quickly touch over is another race that is happening this weekend. It's Clash Daytona, a race that started out with such promise a few years ago when the PTO went there and we thought, shit, this is the future of triathlon racing. And to me, to be honest, it's sort of become a little less compelling. But this year's men's race in particular has some firepower on that start list, mate. Like we're talking Vincent Louis, Leo Berger, we've got Jackson Laundry, Leo Berger, Henry Skurman. I see Magnus Ditlev's on there. Jason West. Like there's some names on this start list, mate. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race. Like you say, I remember sitting there a few years ago watching the race because we watched it as a sort of community thing, didn't we? We all had our headphones on and we were watching the race and lots of chatting and bantering backwards and forwards. And at that point, it did feel like it was the future of professional triathlon with the PTO who are going to be funding it and bringing it forward. The PTO stepped away from it now. And like you say, it's kind of fizzled out a little bit. The whole Clash thing is, I love their style of racing with the arenas and and a very condensed, interesting broadcast. It's just whether the broadcast is actually going to be interesting. That's the biggest question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, again, what makes me interested to see this is having the Vince, the Leos, and the Henrys there. I mean, Tom Bishop as well, a sort of guy that we've sort of seen step up. I'd love to see like a Morgan Pearson go there. And I mean, the women's race, I didn't mean to not mention them, sorry. Jackie Herring, Julie Darren, Sarah Perez-Sala, sorry. Hannah DeVete, who's Hayden Wild's partner. It's going to be interesting. But again, I like this. I really like to see that race where you get to see some of the short course guys step up. And I know that Vincent Louis is going to be in Bahrain the weekend after, so is Henry. So it should be interesting. Again, I hope the broadcast is still good. They do a good job of the broadcast, and I hope that they maybe learned some of the lessons from the previous versions to make it, as good as we know it can be. But yeah, Ian, I'm excited to see this.
So am I. So let's round the year off well with a great race in Clash Daytona, shall we?
It's also I know that Lionel Sanders is racing somewhere in California to 70.3 this week, and I think Jackson Laundrie is doing the double. He's racing the Daytona race on the Saturday, then flying to California to race on the Sunday. Good luck. And there's also IronMan Western Australia, which is happening this weekend as well. But mate, normally at this part of the show, we do the whole podcast membership plug and stuff like that. It's probably not needed at this point because it's the end of the year. I mean, if you guys want to, mxendurance.com/podcast. Thank you guys for listening this year. It's been a big year for us. We've enjoyed doing it.
We'll be back
next year.
We'll be back. We'll do something Christmassy over Christmas, and we'll be back. Lots of excitement coming up.
Stuff. Mate, if people want to find out things, where do they need to go?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at tford14 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app, which makes it super easy and is very helpful. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow. If you've got any comments, questions, or criticisms, send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
Mate, a good one. Again, we'll probably do something in the next couple of weeks, but guys, again, thanks for listening. All that stuff. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Blah, blah, blah. Cheerio.
Over and out.